We've heard rumors about FEMA rejecting or confiscating stuff or people being threatened. What was your experience there?
I would say absolutely. There was certainly a high level of skepticism. We got up there, there were the rumors of the looting. There was rumors of FEMA shutting down locations and individuals. And as we got integrated with the locals, some of those rumors were certainly brought to life. It's certainly much more vast and devastating than I think most can imagine. What we saw with some of the houses that were just literally picked up with 30 to 40 mile an hour currents is taken off, that the majority of the 20 or 30,000 pounds of food that we were able to collect was donated. We bought the first round.
Wow. By the way, my name is Joe McClane. I host a radio program called A Catholic Take, where we look at the world through a Catholic lens. I'd love for you to hang out with us. If you like it, give it a thumbs up and let us know what you think in the comments below. Our friend from Census Fidelity was interviewing Jason Murphy last week from the Martyrs Walk. And so I immediately did two things. Number one, I donated myself. And then number two, I reached out to Jason to see if I couldn't get him on the team. And he joins us this morning. Good morning to you, Jason. Appreciate your time.
Hey, Joe. Yeah, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Well, praise be to God for those that step up and help out, and you are definitely on that list. So thank you for all you're doing to help out. But can you give us, you've been, your boots on the ground, you were there. Tell us what you saw. What did you experience?
Yeah, so I just got back late last night. First real bed and first shower in almost a week. So that was nice. It's certainly much more vast and devastating than I think most can imagine. I know we've all seen this sensationalized videos on social media or the news, and certainly those are the horrific of what's being seen. But until you get on the ground and you see that it's not just a little valley here and a little holler there, it is so vast and amazing to see what this water's done and how it's traveled. The higher up elevations are devastated. The low-lying valleys have been devastated. It took a long time to kind of reel in. When we first convoyed up there last Thursday, we began, as you got into the Asheville area, you start seeing a few trees down, and then you see, a little landslide here, a little landslide there. And on the main roads, you'd see certainly signs of issues. And we got into Candler, North Carolina, which is a little bit west of Asheville. And it was really hard to determine until we started venturing out to some of the other smaller areas with supplies and materials. We really started to kind of see the houses that were wiped out, the cars just randomly up in the forest. Small creek beds that I'm sure we're all familiar with that are just like ankle deep with the nice smooth river rocks in them are now 40-foot wide, flowing rivers. So yeah, it's a heck of a lot going on.
It's hard to imagine. I see a lot of people online say because they're up in the mountains, like, where did all the water come from? Because it's blowing their minds to think that this much volume of water came down those mountains. Was it just the training of the storm sort of sitting on top of this location? Because something similar like that happened in Houston during Hurricane Harvey. We had trillions of gallons of water fall on top of us because the storm just sat there and churned and churned. Was that what happened there?
Yeah, I mean, there was reports of, almost 3 feet of water, in a couple hours. Numerous places just it did exactly that. And the difference with Houston, the difference with New Orleans, where I'm from down in Louisiana myself, you have a slow, gradual rising of water, so there's a little bit more time to prepare. Whereas in the mountains, this water's coming down so fast and is gaining speed as it's continuing, and it all of a sudden is now a mountain of water, 100 yards down from where it might have gathered in a small pool or an area where there's perhaps a spring. and then it's just rushing down. And I mean, I saw twisted metal of modular homes or mobile homes where the metal was just wrapped around in a circle. I mean, it just looked like if you took a straw and tied it on your finger. That's pretty much what the metal was looking like. And it's hard to understand how much of a power and magnitude that water was as it rushed down the mountain. But that's exactly what happened. Is it just picked up gravity. It picked up a mass with not just water, but it's now thick, moving mass of rocks and silt and trees. And it's just, all of that has mass and weight to it. So it just continues to pick up. And what we saw with some of the houses that were just literally picked up with 30 to 40 mile an hour currents of these raging water masses. And I saw, houses just slammed up against trees with, 10, 12-inch branches, protruding through them. And just really tough to understand and see that. And speaking to a few people, just listening to that, the sounds, I guess, if you've ever been near a tornado or, of course, even a hurricane with all of the noise coming, but especially a tornado, you have that rumbling of a train, that carnage, that wreckage coming towards you. And I can't even imagine what that would be like to be right there present with as it's happening.
Yeah. Tell me about the people you encountered there and how are they dealing with the aftermath of this? Maybe even tell me what their needs were.
Yeah, so upon arrival last Thursday, we were kind of brought in to Candler, North Carolina. There's a security or consulting firm, Preparedness Consulting Services, that some of our guys in leadership who kind of organized our mission had been in communication with, and they had essentially set up a hub in there up there in Pole Creek Baptist Church in Candler. And so when we arrived there, they had it really didn't have as much wreckage that we, kind of anticipated. We just didn't know what we were going into. You see everything on the news and you think, okay, well, everything must be devastated. And that's what's deceiving, because there are areas that you drive through and you're like, okay, well, we saw maybe there's a little bit of overflow of water, things like that. But when we get to Candler, they sit up nicely. So they're up on a hill. They had a very, very well organized food distribution center set up. But it was day 7 after the hurricane, and they hadn't seen any relief from FEMA at that point. But interestingly enough, within 30 minutes, they had a Chinook begin to land right there in their ball field. So that was the first supplies. Wow. They were pretty well off. So we kind of assisted them getting their stock set up. But his goal, Kurt Ivans with CPS, his goal was to really set up as a hub and then start venturing out into some of the more affected areas that did not have that type of assistance, didn't have areas for FEMA to potentially land or whatnot. So once we started taking supplies, by Monday, we made our way. No, I'm sorry, today's Tuesday. The days are gone. By day 2, we decided to venture to Fairview, North Carolina, which is a little, down southeast, I guess, of Asheville. And once we got there, we really started to see what was going on. You got into these lower valleys where all of that rushing water had been. Folks were in shock, really. We didn't see, the first day or so, we really didn't see a lot from the locals. But once we got set up, day 2, day 3, then we started seeing the folks come out and there was a house that was located right behind our distribution point there in Fairview, and it was sitting about 300 or 400 yards away from its foundation, and it was completely wiped out. And I got to speak with the owners who kind of described what that would have been like, because they essentially abandoned the house they were in, went next door to the mother's house, waited for the water to fill up the basement, which is about an 8-foot basement. Wow. Then it began to fill up the first floor. They went into the second floor and they watched from the small gable window of the second floor as their home was lifted by this raging current, brought down the river, and then slammed into a tree bed and just disassembled. Their life just disappeared. So speaking to the husband, who was able to kind of verbalize what had taken place, his wife was just in pure shock, and she really just had a blank stare and really didn't even get out of the car. Didn't want to, venture and look. And that was the look we saw in many people. Some people, as we began to distribute and assist, we would have people get out of their cars barefoot and just walking over, and we'll say, "Hey, how are you doing? How can we help you?" And they just said, "I don't even know. I lost everything. I don't know where to begin." And that was tough. So, trying to remain positive and like, well, we're here to help you. We got I can't say everything you need because we can't replace, everything you had, but, we've got what you need to get started, get some food, get some water, get some supplies going. And that was the tough part. And then we started to see, as we were there on, the last few days, the locals starting to pour out to assist us. So that was really a good sign that they were actually kind of, coming out now and really starting to, they wanted to play a part of kind of their own recovery, that's a very healthy thing to see. And then we hear the stories of friends that were lost, friends that are missing, and really starting to digest, the magnitude and impact that this thing had.
Wow. It's one of the silver linings, I would say, that came out of Harvey, which was an incredibly devastating storm here in the Houston area, was that neighbors help neighbors, strangers help strangers. And you saw this great act of charity and generosity towards each other. And I think that's always a beautiful thing. So it sounds like you're seeing that there now.
Yeah, and that's a very healthy sign. I think that's what essentially our military will do in unstable countries and environments. Is they'll go in, they'll help establish some sort of form of, well, first and foremost, security, and then help the economy and supplies and all that. And then all of a sudden, the locals will come in, and then the military, should start a pullback and let these guys do what they do. They know, they have the know-how. They know who the most affected are and what's needed and where. Because, as non-locals there, which the majority of the volunteers are, we don't know the best routes to get to, those that are isolated or those that are in most need. And so that was a great thing to see, the outpouring of the locals. I mean, across the country, the outpouring of generosity of those in the surrounding states and Southeast was wonderful to see.
I do want to ask you, because there's tons of rumors that are flying around the internet right now, and it's just getting really crazy. Yesterday, I saw a video of a Black Hawk helicopter seemingly harassing one of these volunteer aid stations. Listen, it doesn't have to be the government that owns Black Hawk. Anybody can buy one, I suppose. But who owns the Black Hawks? It's the government. So, why would they be doing this? We've seen some videos. We've heard rumors about FEMA rejecting or confiscating stuff, or people being threatened. What was your experience there when it came to what the government or official agencies were doing? Was there any shenanigans from your point of view?
I would say absolutely. There was certainly a high level of skepticism by most of the folks that were with us and that we first met with and rendezvoused with in Candler. Of course, there's always the rumors, and the first rumor that we were essentially prepared for was that there were mass lootings. And that was nothing that we ever encountered, but that was certainly something. And then one begets the question, why would that rumor get started? Well, I guess there's a lot of potential reasons, but maybe to keep people away who might want to come up there and might be too scared, and isn't that what the government does? They try to keep people living in fear so that we trust the government, and the government will take care of us and rescue us. Well, that's a whole other conversation. But we got up there, there were the rumors of the looting. There was rumors of FEMA shutting down locations and individuals. And as we got integrated with the locals, some of those rumors were certainly brought to life. And I can tell you firsthand, I think Saturday morning, I was heading to our distribution point, and I got a message from one of our guys that were with the Martyrs Walk efforts, and he said, "I heard that FEMA shut down your location. Is that true?" And as I got to this distribution point, of course, I was the first one there. There was no one in the parking lot. I was unlocking, we call it. I was untying the tarps to open the front doors. And I decided, well, I'm going to go ahead and just give a boots on the ground perspective. So I did a live on Instagram and just clarified that there was no FEMA there. And we were open for business. But throughout the day, I began to speak with some of the volunteer fire department folks in Fairview. And indeed, FEMA had arrived. And they came, and one gentleman in a FEMA tag basically went to their local fire department and told about 30 to 40 of the volunteer fire department and volunteers in that location to stand down and that FEMA was coming. And they basically conveyed to me that they're just standing around in the firehouse. They have a lot of things they can be doing. They were going out. And so basically that was true. That was a true there. And then, basically we had no issues there. We had a FEMA representative stop by yesterday, and she was looking for an address, and I had no idea why she was there. She wouldn't answer why she was there. So I actually took a picture of the back of her truck, and she was not very happy with that and said, "Why'd you take a picture of my truck?" I said, "Well, I like to take pictures." And she said, "Yeah, but I want to know why you took a picture of my truck." And I said, "Well, is it illegal to take a picture of your truck?" And I said, "Well, why won't you tell me why you're here? You want me to answer your questions, but you won't answer mine." And she said, "It's not my truck anyway." And she drove off. And she had a FEMA tag on it. She was definitely from FEMA. So that was interesting. It was an all blacked out vehicle. Turns out she was actually looking for some other folks. But another interesting story was that some of the locals came in that I hadn't really met, and they were trying to convince us to pack up all of our stuff from our donation site that was on the site of it was a private location of Turgua Brewery Company in Fairview, and they wanted to convince me to load everything up and take it to the school. And my rebuttal to that was, well, the school is public property, and they continue to say, "Oh no, the PTA and the principals fully support what you guys are doing. I think that's the best thing that y'all can do." And I kind of kicked back and said, "Well, let's just wait and see what happens here." Turns out that they were forced to take all of the materials from the fire department over to the school, and guess who showed up within an hour? FEMA. So it turned into a FEMA spot where you could only come between 12 and 4. All you could get was an MRE and a little ration of water. And I'm sure I didn't go down there, but if you've been to a DMV, I can guarantee you that's pretty much how it was run. Whereas we had a full shop with fuel, diapers, formula, water, canned goods, everything you could imagine.
Not surprised. I stood in a FEMA line for an hour and a half to 2 hours. I think it was after Hurricane Ike, if I remember correctly. And I think I got like 12 bottles of water and a half melted bag of ice. And I said, I will never do this again. This was a complete waste of my time and my family's time. So, I mean, bureaucracy, this is the thing. I worked for the Fed. I was the United States Marine Corps. I know what government bureaucracy looks like. The hurry up and wait mentality. We can't even get out of our own way. And the law of subsidiarity, which is inherent to what we believe as Catholics, as Christians, we believe that the best solution happens at the simplest possible level. And yet we're seeing an active interference getting in the way of these volunteers that come in. And, honestly, part of the news reports that blew me away about this was like the volunteers that came in to help with the helicopter relief. All these people with helicopters coming in, and then they set up an organization that coordinated that, made sure they had gas, make sure they had addresses, and you take these to those people over there, and you bring those people here. Like the level of coordination by volunteers, utterly amazing. So hats off to everybody around the country who stepped up. We're going to run out on the radio side here. I want to ask you, what is it like? What are you doing with this money? What are you buying? What do those people need? Do you want more money? Do you want people to send diapers? I mean, what is the actual need?
Yeah, I can tell you right now that supplies are good right now. Supplies are good now. What is most important, if you can get portable heaters, kerosene, propane heaters, blankets, new blankets. Please don't, just unload your closet with used stuff and bag them up, because that's too difficult for the volunteers to source through. Initially, our goal was to start raising money for supplies. We had the idea that we would bring a truckload of supplies. We would, raise $5,000 to $10,000 and be done, and not be done, but it was just going to be a kind of a one and done in a sense. Well, this thing has taken off that the majority of the 20 or 30,000 pounds of food that we were able to collect was donated. We bought the first round.
Wow.
And then our fundraising efforts took off. And between the initial Venmo and the GoFundMe, we're now over $120,000. And I want to take that money, put it back in the community. I want to rebuild houses. I want to raise $250,000 at this point. I want to buy appliances, furniture, and I want to make this thing, much bigger than what we thought.
Did you like that video? It's okay. You can admit it. It's perfectly fine. Hey, we cover the big stories of our day, from inside the church to outside the church to all points in between, and we do it from a Catholic perspective. It's called A Catholic Take. It's a radio program Monday through Friday. We live stream it right here on this channel, by the way, so make sure to subscribe, like, and share. We would be very grateful to you. And don't forget, you're going to want to watch this video right here because you don't want to miss anything.